the Kaleidoscope block, also known as World Without End. I made this quilt quite a number of years ago, right around 2007, and I believe it took me approximately a year to make. Not because it's a difficult pattern, but because I just wanted to enjoy the process. And that's something I want to talk to you about before we begin how to put this block together. Welcome. My name's Angela Davis, and I'm the Foreign Quilter. And if you've never been to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, thank you so much for joining me today. I finished this quilt in 2007. There's 88 blocks in it, and they may look the same, but in actuality, they're reversed. So on one block, you have a wide black triangle, and on the block next to it, you have a wide colored triangle, and the narrow block is the black. And in this one, the narrow block is the print. And that's what gives it that sort of circular effect, those different widths of those triangles. It's the same pattern pieces, but you're just putting the colors in different orientation to give it that effect. It's a wonderful, wonderful quilt to work up scraps like you see here. Now, when I made this one, like I said, it took me about a year to complete, and I just enjoyed the process. And I was thinking about my process a lot while I was hanging this up. And if you'll notice closely, when you pan up to it really well, so if you'll notice, I have some points in the middle that don't even match, they don't even meet. And then here I have a point where it's completely chopped off. And as I was hanging up the quilt, I was thinking to myself, why didn't I go back and pull those pieces out and restitch them so that those points match perfectly? And that word, perfectly, perfect, perfectionist, is not a word I would describe myself. I have always enjoyed the process. And if there were some what I call happy mistakes, I always left them in. And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, well, why? Why did I leave them in like that? And I think it's because when I think of quilts, I think about the quilts that have gone before us that got loved to death. The ones that were made of the old curtains that hung in the kitchen. The ones that were made from Dad's flannel shirt, or from your brother's pajamas, or from your nightgown that your mother made you or your grandmother made you. And those squares and points might not have matched either. But yet, they still kept you warm. And they still served the purpose. And they still covered you with love. And for me, that's always been the end goal, you know. I can still look back at this and think about how much I enjoyed the process of making this quilt. And I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much was because I didn't drive myself crazy if the points didn't match, or if I accidentally cut off a point. If I was making a quilt for a very special occasion, I would take the mistake out and redo it. This one is meant to be loved and used up, and to be loved again, and patched, and cuddled under. As a matter of fact, my kids and I, when they were little, we used to play the color game with this quilt, and I helped them teach them their colors with this quilt. And for me, that's what it's about. So yeah, this one has some really fond memories of the kids and I laying underneath it and sitting on top of it and playing the color game. Or matching up the colors, or finding a color here that may be over there. You know, we would match them. So that was always the fun for me. If you're interested, I do have the pattern just for the pieces to make a single block in the description box below as a free download, and the front page is just a coloring page. for you to work up some colors if you want to. But just keep in mind that the two main templates, you're going to do half the blocks. The wide triangle is going to be one solid color, and the half the blocks are going to be the wide triangle, the Scrappy, and the same thing with the narrow triangle. And so for example, this one has 88 squares. 44 of them have wide black triangle and 44 of them have the wide print pattern in the Scrappy. And then the four corners are all like a tone on tone white. So it was just a very, I remember just having a lot of fun with this quilt. And afterwards, just the enjoyment of playing the color game with my kids. So make a quilt, make a Kaleidoscope quilt, make it Scrappy, and give it to somebody you love. Or make it for yourself because it's time to make one for yourself. Or make one just because. It really is a fun block to put together. So here we go. Hope you enjoy the video, and remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any more videos. I started out by tracing the pattern out of my book, and this came from the book Maggie Malone, 120 Patchwork Patterns for Patchwork Quilts. When I trace a pattern, I trace the pattern according to how it's labeled in the book, and then I'll also write a little notation at the top, anything specific that pertains to that particular block. For instance, I'll put the name of the block, I'll put whether or not the pattern piece includes seam allowance or does not include seam allowance. I'll put down how much the finished size of the block will be, and so on and so forth. Once I have the pattern copied, I'll make a second pattern to cut and keep the original pattern intact. And sometimes I'll make additional notations such as the page of the book, the name of the book, and the author. Because of the angle of the triangles, I marked the finished seam. And what I'm showing you here is where the lines intersect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the paper back where the seam allowance is. And what this does is it shows me where those little dog ears are. And if you don't know what a dog ear is, it's that extra fabric that gets in the seam allowance, because when you're dealing with those long triangle points, that's excess fabric that you don't need in the seam. So I'm trimming those off now so that when I cut my fabric, it's already prepared. When cutting my fabric, I laid 2 layers of fabric down. The right side is facing up toward the ceiling. I place my pattern on top and I'm cutting right along the edge of the pattern piece. Once I have all my pattern pieces cut, I lay them out according to the pattern. And I'm lining them up so that the center point lines up. If the edge in the back does not line up, that's okay, but the center point must line up. And remember, I trimmed off those dog ears, so there should be a 1/4 inch seam allowance there between the seam line and the edge of the fabric. And I'm picking up each piece for that top block so that the large triangle is on top of the small triangle, and I'm feeding them into the machine in the same direction as the previous 2 pieces. I'm using my plastic stiletto to help me guide that corner under the presser foot so that it doesn't fold back. When pressing, I'm always pressing toward the dark. So in this situation, I'm pressing toward the black. And if you can hear on the video, I am using a hot steam iron. So I'm trying to be really careful not to burn my fingers. I'm laying it out, and I'm going to sew 2 pairs together, and I'm going to match up that center point very specifically. And if the outer edge does not line up, that's okay, because I'm matching up that center point. Once your 2 halves are sewn, you'll notice there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance there, and that will ensure that your points match up well. When I get to the center seam,
I'm going to be very careful to cross the intersection where the seams meet on those pieces, and that will help me ensure that the points line up and that I'm not chopping off any corners. And again, I'm pressing the seams toward the black. But I'm also pressing that center down to open up that seam a little bit so that that center stays flat. When I sew on the white corner, I line up the point of the white corner so that it aligns with the center point of the center of the block. And the four corners of the white always get sewn to the large triangle. Once all four corners are stitched on, I press them open and then I trim to 9.5 inches.
So I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a like and a thumbs up. Leave some comments. I would love to hear from you. And please try the Kaleidoscope block. I know you'll enjoy it. Thank you for watching. And remember, why sleep when you can sew? I'm Angela Davis, and I'm the 4M Quilter. Bye.